Good evening and welcome back to 31 Horror Nights. It's October 22nd and tonight's movie is Talk to Me. This is a very recent horror movie from Australia about a woman who I guess has some friends who for some reason have this artifact that allows you to talk to the dead, and they make it into like a party game. And of course, to the surprise of absolutely nobody, constantly trying to reach out to the dead backfires. This movie is the debut of Danny and Michael Philippou, which are apparently a team of directors who are twin brothers. We've had some good movies over this Horror Nights, but we haven't really had a lot of really scary movies, and this looks like that might fit the bill. I'm interested to see what it's like. I'm gonna go give it a watch. Oh boy, this movie was a doozy. From a technical standpoint, I think it is the best movie I've watched all month. It's not my favorite though. I'm giving it a 9, and I don't feel right giving it a 10 because this is a deeply depressing movie. You can't really have fun with it. And I certainly have a lot of thoughts about it, so I'm just gonna get started. First things first, I made a mistake when watching the trailer that I thought that the characters in this movie were like college age or even young adults, but no, they're teenagers. They're like in high school. And that really helps the story along to explain how stupid a lot of these decisions the characters make are. And that has two sides to it. Not only does it help make this movie a bit of a cautionary tale, it also helps humanize, especially the main character, because even though she constantly makes horrible decisions, they're understandable and you feel sorry for her. I talk a lot about how some horror movies really just seem to rely on idiot plot, how they require the characters making terrible decisions for no reason in order to keep going. This movie doesn't really do that. Yes, there are stupid decisions, but it's less about the characters just being stupid to move the story forward. This isn't really the case with the second half, but the first half of this movie has a very clear, allegory to it. And I don't know if this was intentional on the part of the filmmakers. I can't imagine how it wouldn't be, because it's a little too perfect otherwise. But this game with the severed hand is a perfect allegory for drug use. Everything lines up. The first hit, if you will, happens at a party among friends. Friends who have done it over and over, and there's no apparent lasting consequences on them. That's how they get into it, but the reason why they keep coming back is also the same reasons why people keep going back to drugs. It's a social thing to them, they get a high from it, and they truly believe that they're not going to allow it to go too far. And while obviously this does serve as a warning or a cautionary tale, it also really helps give context to how addictions start out. That only really applies to the first half of the movie, though. The drug metaphor sort of falls apart in the second half, but it's very strong in the first half of the movie. And now, the characters. The main character is a 17-year-old girl named Mia, who is played by Sophie Wilde, and she absolutely kills it with this performance. There's great acting all around in this movie, but she is the standout. The thing about her character, though, is that she makes so many wrong decisions throughout this movie. And while nobody in this situation is blameless, she definitely had the biggest part in how bad this got. But again, this isn't because she's callous or stupid or selfish. Well, she was being selfish, but it wasn't malicious. I think ultimately her fatal flaw is that she's too easy to deceive when she's being told what she wants to hear. I can't really go into detail about the things I really want to talk about concerning this movie without going to spoilers, so I think I'll sum it up like this. Talk to Me is sort of like Hereditary in the fact that it's as good as a horror movie can possibly be while still not really being fun to watch. This movie is not just scary, it is depressing. And I think a part of that is, just like Hereditary, the main crux of the conflict in this movie is not about something supernatural, it's about something very relatable. Hurting the people that you love. It's not for the faint of heart, it's not for people who don't like horror movies, but if you are a horror movie aficionado, like I think I definitely qualify for at this point, I would recommend it. And now I really want to talk about these spoilers. The way that this game works, and I don't know exactly how these rules were laid out, there would have to be a little bit of experimentation in order to know this, but the rules are you touch this hand, light a candle, and then say, "Talk to me," and then you are suddenly holding the hand of a spirit. And then if you say, "I let you in," that spirit possesses you. And at that point, it's up to the people around you to keep track of the time, because From what I can tell, there are no lasting consequences if they remove the hand from yours and blow at the candle before 90 seconds have passed. They describe being possessed as feeling amazing, which definitely helps the drug metaphor. But that's not why Mia makes the horrible decision in this movie. She and a small group of friends, including her best friend's younger brother, he's like 13, 14, somewhere in there, spend a long time just having fun with it, doing the game over and over. But then the little brother Riley asks if he can have a turn, and his older sister says absolutely not. So that was the right thing to do. Well, the right thing to do would be to never do this in the first place, but that was her being responsible. But then she leaves the room. Riley asks again, and then Mia sort of says, okay, let him do it, but like only about 60 seconds. Like, that's the thing. Like, they're like, well, we'll be cautious. That was her first mistake. And then she makes her second, much worse mistake once the possession starts. Instead of all the creepy, kooky, wacky spirits we'd seen up till then, suddenly Riley gets possessed by a very calm, kind spirit who talks to her and uses nicknames that would only be known by her late mother, who died 2 years prior. And the friend who's keeping track of the time says, it's been 50 seconds, but then Mia says, no, can we talk a little bit longer? And even though that was understandable for her to do, that was still an example of her being selfish, and there are dire consequences, because right after that, Riley gets possessed by a bunch of other spirits that try to violently murder him so that they can take his body. And they do it through the form of self-harm. The possession goes on for way longer than even 90 seconds, and I don't think that they blow out the candle at the right point or something. I have to imagine the candle went out eventually, but that's something they bring up later. But a lot more pressing is the fact that this kid is about to die of blood loss and or blunt force trauma. So they have to take him to the hospital, and the subject of blame is brought up. And the thing about this situation is, even though Mia was the one most at fault for letting Riley do the thing in the first place and insisting that they continue past the preset time limit, everybody in that room was complicit. Jade and her boyfriend were also at fault for leaving the room. However, both the movie and the characters in the movies seem to mostly just blame Mia about it. And while that's not really fair, it's also kind of justified. Riley's condition keeps getting worse. He tries to violently kill himself every time he comes to, and the characters are trying to figure out what to do. And Mia, once again, does the most selfish thing she could have done. She took the hand and uses it to try to contact her mom again. They try using the hand to fix Riley, and more plot developments keep coming. Mia becomes convinced that there's no saving Riley, and the most humane thing to do would be to put him out of his misery because she sees visions of him being absolutely tortured. But what she doesn't know until the very end is the fact that during her first, session with the hand, they went slightly over the time limit, and they say if you go over 90 seconds, they're not going to leave. And I think that they acted like it was okay because she was able to come out even though they were a few seconds over, but the initial spirit must have stayed with Mia and is showing her things. That spirit is impersonating her mother, keep telling her to do things, and lying to her. And while the movie does have an intentionally ambiguous ending, it becomes even more ambiguous when you realize you can't entirely trust anything you saw after that first session where they went over the time limit. It's at the point where Mia is about to push Riley in a wheelchair into oncoming traffic, and then there's a weird sort of cut, and then you see her body being flung into an oncoming car. And what's really interesting about this ending is what it chooses to keep ambiguous and what it chooses to not be ambiguous about at all. We definitely know that Mia died. And not only did she die, she became one of the spirits trapped in the hand, or hands, I guess. There are multiple of them. Because you see her in this big dark void and she walks up to a hand, grabs a hold of it, and then suddenly she sees herself at a party in a place that's not even near her. I think it was Greece. And then the guy holding her hand says, "I let you in," and then the movie ends. So now she's just part of the spectacle. That is not up for interpretation. She died and now she is trapped in this horrible game. What is up to interpretation is all the things that she saw. We don't have any way of knowing how much what we saw was real and how much of it was an illusion created by the spirit. And for all we know, that might even extend to the things that she saw after she died. But when I really think about it, the reason why they were able to manipulate her is that they kept telling her things that she wanted to hear. I'm pretty sure that anybody who dies because of this game becomes trapped in it. So it doesn't really make sense for them to lie to her once she already is part of the game. And it might be the case that it's actually sadder just to show her the truth. The group got in contact with one of the people who owned the hand before that friend group did, and he said that the body will naturally push out spirits on their own, so it will just take some time. However, Mia doesn't think this is true after seeing images and visions of Riley being tortured in limbo, but since that was an illusion created by the spirit, maybe that was true and Riley was just going to push out the spirits anyway. Maybe the spirits were trying to get Mia to kill Riley out of mercy because that way they could actually have him. We also never see the act of Mia jumping out into traffic. We just see what happens. We don't know if she threw herself out there, or if so, why, or if it was Jade who was running up, pushing her, or if so, why. But no matter what outcome came from this, it's really depressing. The movie is very sad in the fact that Mia never gets a chance to redeem herself and make up for the mistakes that she makes throughout the movie. However, a sequel is in development, and the director said that this was always meant to be a franchise, so maybe in future installments we can actually see her character arc come to a conclusion. I am very interested to see what the sequels hold for her character, and even if not, this whole situation, how did this start? But until then, we still just have the first movie, and I thought the first movie was really good. It wasn't a fun or feel-good movie, but it was really, really well made. Objectively speaking, probably the best movie I've watched this entire month at this point. Alright, thank you for listening. I'll see you tomorrow.